let's take a moment to take a roll call of board members. When I call your name, please say aye. And if attending remotely, make the appropriate disclosures. Vice Chair Jonathan Kanashiro.
Aloha, sorry, couldn't be there again. I'm in my office alone. Looks like a full table over there. That's like one of the first times I should have been there.
Hello, John. Thanks for joining remotely. In the boardroom with me today, Board Member Lance Wilhelm,
Yep.
Board Member Gina Albano,
Aye.
Board Member Edwin Sniffen,
Here.
Board Member Jeffrey Laupola,
Aye.
and Board Member Darian Chun.
Aye.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today in person. Also in the room with us today, Manager Ernie Lau.
Aloha.
Aloha. Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata.
Here.
Aloha. Board Secretary Joey Cruz, that's you.
Here.
Aloha. Manager Secretary Kim Kawai. Aloha. Information Specialist Wayne Maria.
Here.
Aloha. And joining us by Zoom, Jessica Wong from City and County Corp Counsel. Aloha, Jessica. So we're starting today with a public hearing. The Honolulu Board of Water Supplies public hearing was published, in the Friday, May 15th Star Advertiser. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the public the opportunity to testify on the item number 1, proposed fiscal year 2026-2027 operating and capital improvement program budget for the Board of Water Supply. Chair recognizes Megan Muramatsu and Jennifer Taylor. Aloha.
Good afternoon, Chair Na'alehu and members. Thank you for holding this fiscal year 2027 public hearing. This is going to be very similar to the previous budget workshop presentation. I'm Megan Muramatsu from the Executive Support Office, and this is Jennifer Thaler from our Capital Projects Division. We'll first review a summary of the entire budget, then details of the operating budget, and end with Jennifer's presentation of the CIP. Presented here are the FY23 to FY27 operating and CIP budgets. The operating budget has consistently grown over this period. The FY27 budget totals $311.6 million, which is a 10% increase over fiscal year 26. The increase is primarily due to material supplies and services, fixed charges, and CIP driven by factors such as tariffs, instability in the Middle East, supply chain disruptions, and the March 2026 Kona Low storm recovery efforts. The CIP budget has increased over this period as we continually work on repairing, replacing, and investing in our existing infrastructure. However, in fiscal year 2027, the CIP totals $266.8 million, which is a slight 5.8% decrease from fiscal year 26. The slight decrease reflects a focus on executing and finishing existing projects, and Jennifer will discuss CIP later in this presentation. The proposed operating budget is based on total operating fund resources of $490.6 million. Operating fund resources are made up of the beginning fund balance plus revenues and prior year lapses and adjustments. The Board of Water Supply has been working diligently to maintain safe and reliable service. We are working on maintaining a carryover balance in line with this board's priorities to ensure we have sufficient funds to execute our mission. Carryover is the unbudgeted and unreserved cash amount remaining at the end of each fiscal year. Thankfully, with the board's support, we were able to adopt rate increases in November 2023, which became effective in February 2024. While these rate increases were much needed, as the board may recall, to avoid rate shock, we deliberately limited them to no more than 10% in each fiscal year. Understanding that this would mean a gradual rebuilding of our fund balance, which was diminished post-COVID because rates were not raised and increased costs compounded by supply chain delays related to the pandemic. The rate increase to be implemented at the start of fiscal year 27 is 8.5%. The fiscal year 27 budget reflects the increases in expenses we have all faced and a strategic use of the operating fund at a time when borrowing is more expensive. The result is a projected fund balance carryover into the future of $58 million. This slide illustrates our total resources versus our total expenditures, with resources being the column to the left made up of blue, which are revenues, green, which is the fund balance, and orange, which are lapses and adjustments from prior years. Expenditures for that year are represented in the purple column on the right. Fiscal 24 to 25 are represented as actuals, while 26 and 27 are budgeted amounts. We will continue putting our operating fund balance to work to ensure continued operations and investment into our water system. The debt service coverage ratio target set by the board is 1.6. The fiscal year 25 debt service coverage ratio for senior debt is 4.45, and the all-in debt service coverage ratio is 3.19. The board's net working capital target is between 180 and 60 days. The net working capital in fiscal 25 was 254 days. As illustrated by the use of the operating fund in the fiscal 27 budget, we are drawing down our fund balance to meet the to meet the board's net working capital target. The debt service coverage ratio measures the cash flow available to pay current debt obligations. It's a key measure of a company's ability to repay its loans and take on new financing. It's calculated by net operating income over debt service. Net operating income is revenue less operating expenses. Debt service, on the other hand, is the total of all existing debt owed by the company due in the same period. This includes all interest and principal. The indenture requirement or commitment to our bondholders for our debt service coverage ratio is 1.2. As mentioned earlier, the board's target debt service coverage ratio is 1.6. The board's bond rating has historically been high, and we received a AAA stable rating. This affords us more favorable borrowing rates when we sell bonds. The board did not issue bonds in 2026 or 2025, but S&P affirmed the AAA bond rating in December 2025, and Fitch reconfirmed the AAA bond rating with a review on March 5th, 2026. Only about 2% of municipalities in the U.S. hold a AAA rating, and most government agencies in the state of Hawaii hold lower ratings. The board's high bond rating is a credit to this board's fiscal prudence and planning.
Just want to clarify, Joe, there is another credit that has achieved the AAA rating. That's the Department of Transportation's Highways Fund. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. The total operating fund budget in fiscal 27 is $432.6 million. It's made up of $121 million of operating funds used for the capital improvement program, $119 million for materials, supplies, and services, $82.1 million for fixed charges, $61.9 million for personal services, $43.3 million for debt service, and $4.4 million for equipment. This slide presents the actual operating fund expenditures from fiscal 23 to 25 and budgeted operating fund expenditures for 26 and 27. A major driver of operating fund increases in fiscal year 27 is operating funded CIP, which reflects a $21 million increase over fiscal year 26. As we continue to grow the CIP, we will continue the mix of financing between bonds and operating funds. As current interest rates to borrow are higher than in prior years, the Board of Water Supply has made a conscious decision to utilize operating funds and alternative financing like SRF or WIFIA, Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act funds, to continue the necessary growth of the CIP while balancing costs to our ratepayers. We also actively seek grant funding opportunities when they become available. An increase of about $22 million in materials, supplies, and services also contributed to the increase in operating expenditures. We'll review all these cost categories in more detail. There is no net increase in FTE or full-time equivalent count of positions for the department above the board's authorized 741 FTE. There is a decrease in salaries of $148,000. Salaries reflect increases mandated by collective bargaining and a focus on only funding positions that are actively being recruited. We're continually evaluating organizational and technological changes to increase and optimize operational capacity. We have initiated changes in recruitment and advertising for our vacant positions by leveraging our membership in professional organizations like AWWA and AMWA. We've been working with a marketing consultant to develop a more robust advertising plan for our positions, and we are working with the Department of Human Resources to expedite hiring of licensed engineers. Mayor Blanchiardi's goal to fill as many positions as quickly as possible is being supported by the board. As was reported to the board in December 2025, approximately 36.7% of our workforce will become eligible for retirement within the next 10 years. We understand the seriousness of this number compounded into our existing vacancies. To reach a wider audience with our recruitments, the board continues to invest time and resources into reaching potential candidates. We continue to engage college students with internship opportunities and leverage all modes of media to promote our recruitments. We're constantly in the pursuit of people who are in search of a fulfilling career, providing one of the most critical and essential needs of our community. Highlighted in the graphics here is our summer watership program and participants from 2024. The program aims to engage college students by introducing them to a career at the Board of Water Supply. We hope to convert more participants in this program to full-time Board of Water Supply employees. Yes.
I was one of the summer interns 1 million years ago.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Yep, I was one of these.
Well, you can always come and work here.
Oh, I mean, you get the best deal right now.
He does work
Yeah,
here.
I do work here and, somehow
And
it's
his
been
pay is
more back
adequate
then
for
in
his-
1990. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Inflation and economic instability has increased our required spending in MS&S. The largest increase in this cost category is in professional services. Increases in this category are related to regulatory compliance with laws like the Lead and Copper Rule and NPDES, or the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System laws. Response to Red Hill and water treatment like GAC or granulated activated carbon also contribute to increases in this category. The fiscal 27 equipment budget is reflective of our current plan to purchase and replace fleet vehicles according to our replacement schedule and only as needed. Our debt service is slightly increased in fiscal year 27 due to an increase in notes payable for state revolving funds and bonds payable. In 2024, during our last bond issuance and evaluation by rate agencies, the Board of Water received a AAA rating from Fitch and S&P Global Ratings with a stable outlook for both. Fiscal 26 was the sixth year the board received a AAA rating from S&P, and the fourth year we received it from Fitch. The Board of Water Supply's AAA rating remains one of the only rating of its kind within the state except for EDS. And for reference, a AAA borrow pays about 20 basis points or 0.2% less than a AA borrower on a $50 million bond that equates to about $100,000 in annual interest savings. And then finally, our fixed charges have increased by about 6.7 million or 8.9% due primarily to electricity. And total revenue projections are set to increase by 22.6 million due to the rate increase of 8.5% effective July 1st, 2026. And details are in the next slide. The chart shows the budget versus actual fiscal year 24 and 25 revenues and the fiscal 26 and 27 budgeted revenues. Revenues of the board are almost entirely generated from the metered sales of potable, non-potable, and recycled water. Metered sales are greatly affected by use and weather. In the recent past, we've experienced La Nina or ENSO neutral cycles. El Nino Southern Oscillation is what ENSO stands for. But 2026 calendar year is predicted by the National Weather Service to be an El Nino year, which normally brings drought, flash floods, and severe storms like hurricanes to the islands. We may see increased water usage in drought periods, and the forecasted revenues for fiscal 27 are based on historical patterns and the rate increase on July 1st, 2026 of 8.5%. Metered revenue of potable and non-potable water is up about 20 million with the anticipated rate increase, and interest income is up about 3 million. The summary in the table compares revenues and expenditures for fiscal 26 and 27. While operating fund revenues are projected to increase by 6.8%, operating fund expenses, exclusive of CIP, are projected to also increase by 10%. Now, Jennifer will present on the fiscal year 27 budget.
Thank you, Megan, and good afternoon, Chair Naalehu. I hope someone took a note about finding that picture for our next year's presentation.
Some of the staff are still here from when I worked here, and so they have them hiding in the back there somewhere.
Wow.
They do.
Yeah.
I saw it for.
As mentioned, I'm Jennifer Failer, Program Administrator for the Capital Projects Division. Let's dive into the Capital Improvement Program and budget a little more deeply. The CIP Capital Improvement Program is key to ensuring that the Board of Water Supply is able to achieve its mission and vision: water for life, safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. The Capital Improvement Program not only supports our vision and mission, but it's also aligned with our goals and objectives, both the master and strategic plans and our 6-year capital improvement program. They all fit together like a puzzle to show the full picture or to serve as our playbook. This slide depicts the delicate balance that we strive for between the needs of the system in providing safe, reliable water service with cost-effective management of assets in an aging infrastructure environment. So our budget categories, 3 of them: research and development, renewal and replacement, and capacity expansion. I'll highlight projects in each of these categories in upcoming slides, but first let's look at a map of the locations of all of our fiscal year 27 projects. The red dots are design projects, blue dots are for projects moving to construction. There's 11 design projects and 31 construction projects upcoming in our fiscal year 27 program. So the breakdown of those, category 1, research and development, budget almost 25 million. Example projects include several monitoring and exploratory wells that are being installed to protect our drinking water supplies from any impacts from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility spills. And this is where we budget for the needed construction and project management to oversee our existing project load along with the new fiscal 27 design and construction projects. Category 2 for renewal and replacement of various facilities and infrastructure with a budget of almost 185 million. Example projects are up on the slide there. They include permanent generators at Makaha and Waianae, several different pipeline replacement projects listed there. A couple of PFAS treatment facilities, one at Ka'amilo and one at Moanalua. Jump into category 3 projects is capacity expansion, budget of 14 million. We have all the projects up here. There's 12 million is for the Kala'eloa desalination facility, which is scheduled to start construction in fiscal year 27. The next two are design projects, highlight the Honolulu District 42 and the Kalakaua 16-inch projects are to replace 1945 era World War II cast iron pipelines in populated areas of town. So we'll sure to keep an eye out for those projects. The photo on the slide is an aerial view showing the location of the Kala'eloa desal facility. And I just want to again bring up this topic following the change made in fiscal year 26 for our fiscal year 27 budget continues to authorize non-operating funded capital improvement projects to be used for 24 months instead of 12. This makes our budget consistent with the city's capital improvement program budget practices and will give us more time to obtain permits and comply with numerous laws and regulations before awarding our construction contracts. We're currently resolving numerous delay claims that are still a result of awarding construction contracts without having all those required permits in hand and authorizations. Another benefit of this policy is it provides the opportunity to use the diversified financing options that Megan mentioned with lower interest rates such as SRF and WIFIA. This program is also require even more time-consuming compliance activities to satisfy the Buy America, Build America Act and American Iron and Steel requirements, for example, but they do lessen the burden on our ratepayers. So we appreciate the board's support of this policy, and I will hand it back over to Megan to discuss the different sources of funding that comprise our capital improvement program.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so closing out. This matrix shows the project categories and the sources of funding for a CIP, and sources include the operating fund, funding through low interest loans from the Department of Health State Revolving Fund, and the Special Expendable Fund, which are collections of our water system facility charges that fund system expansion, and our improvement or bond fund. So the diversification of funds, we actively seek to diversify our CIP funding through external funds and low interest loans to reduce the cost on ratepayers like Jennifer just discussed. Although not listed in this fiscal year, we are actively pursuing extramural or outside funding sources by agreement. We've applied for various grants, including the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program or HMGP, and if awarded, will reflect funding through budget amendment for some generator projects. In fiscal 26, we budgeted 63 million in WIFIA or Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act funds for the Kalailoa desalination facility. We're still working on executing this federally subsidized loan, but because of the use of non-operating funded CIP approved for 24 months, we did not need to rebudget this funding in fiscal 27. We budgeted 126.8 million in SRF to reflect the increased federal appropriation to this fund because of the bipartisan infrastructure law. We anticipate less SRF funding to be available in future years since this is Bill's 6th year and I believe it's expiring. Although federal funding like SRF and WIFIA requires compliance with contractual provisions, like Jennifer said, Buy America, Build America, American Iron and Steel, which requires certain project components to be built in the US, the loans associated with these programs are federally or state subsidized, which can reduce the cost of borrowing. A small portion of SRF loans are also forgivable, so can make this source of funding even more advantageous for the board. As noted earlier in the presentation, much of our CIP in fiscal 27 is operating funded, as the cost of borrowing and interest rates are relatively high. And because we have a healthy fund balance, we are funding about half of our CIP, 121 million with the operating fund. This will also draw down the fund balance to reach the board's target goal of 60 to 100 days of working capital. The special expendable fund, which are collections of our water system facility charges that fund expansion, are mostly being used for the Kalailoa desalination project. And the improvement fund or bond funds are only being used this year to fund the contract adjustment account, which are projects from prior years that require additional funding. And finally, this slide summarizes the funding required for or requested for fiscal 27. The operating budget is 311.6 million funded by operating funds. CIP totals 266.8 million funded by 121 million in operating, 126.8 in SRF, 14.5 in Special X, and 4.6 million in improvement funds, for a total budget of 578.4 million. Our budget in FY27 remains focused on our vision, Kawaiola. To ensure safe water, we will continue to comply with all drinking water regulations, including 2 major rule changes, PFAS and lead and copper. On top of our mandatory compliance, we are also working to ensure the Red Hill crisis does not impact our customers through continued testing and the development of monitoring wells to characterize contamination within the aquifer. To ensure dependable water, we will continue our water master plan update started in fiscal 26. This will help guide the implementation of high priority projects. To ensure affordable water, we will continue our strong financial management practices and exercise fiscal prudence. We will also continue to seek sources of funding from federal and state governments where available. And then Jennifer and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Members, any questions? I just have one. And when we sat and deliberated as a board to do the rate raise, there was a lot of conversation around it. I think the mayor came, I think the MD came.
Yeah.
And there was this whole conversation about like just how precarious it was to raise rates yet again, and we were seeing it across sector, and that the electric bill was one of the reasons why the rate raise took place. But when you're talking about a 8% increase, what is that in a typical bill for BWS? Do we have that lurking around anywhere? Like, is it like a cup of coffee, or are we talking about
Depends on how much water you use, right?
right? So like an average home.
So, for an average home, this is a 9,000 gallon single family home.
Sure.
That's our average customer usage per month. The bill in July 1st, 2026 was about, it will be, and actually July 1st, 2025, about $77.69. Come July 1st, which is pretty close, it'll go up to about $84.13. So I guess that'll be like a $6 something.
Okay, it's a cup of coffee a month.
Yeah, I guess a Starbucks.
Starbucks coffee.
Yeah, but depending what you drink.
Half a cup of coffee at the airport.
But I don't want to belittle this, but
No, not at all.
It is.
Not at all.
it is an incremental increase that the board approved back in 2023.
Yeah. Okay, and each of those increases are, you said below the double digit,
Yes.
below 10%.
Yes.
One thing that we'll be watching very closely is the cost of power. And I think there's already some indication that electricity costs will start to rise. But we see fuel costs already rising pretty significantly for gasoline and diesel.
Diesel's through the roof. Huh?
So, but in all of this, we monitor the state of our revenue, and as necessary, if costs start to get to beyond what we put in the budget, then you will look at ways to tighten the belt and look at cost savings.
Yeah. No, I just that it's not lost on me that whether you're borrowing the money or you're gonna get the money from the ratepayers, there's a cost somewhere. And to see just how we're funding CIP, it's important to note, you know, where those burdens are and how we balance it out. So I just want to thank the staff for being as mindful as you've been in budgeting, and I know that Ernie, you've asked staff to tighten their belts a number of times. I think your car's like 15 years old and still driving it around, and you know, so
Perfectly fine.
yeah. Well, it's important that we get what we need, but that we use everything up all the way out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Any?
So with that in mind, with knowing that electricity costs are going up, has the Board of Water Supply looked at ways of trying to get away from fuel? Diesel fuel?
Well, you know, electrification of the fleet is, I think, the
One,
target
that's good.
one way.
Where is Board of Water Supply at that point with electrification?
You know, we continue to install, actually acquire more hybrids instead of total EV.
Yeah.
Because I think, for us, we have to build up the EV charging infrastructure. I think, something that, Department of Transportation has taken a much more aggressive approach with the EVs, and charging infrastructure. We'll have to look at how we can plan that out. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting to see too, like some of the stuff that's highlighted. I mean, I think in response to, you know, the wildfire risk and the power shutoffs that HECO, you know, has done and is talking about doing more of in a preventative manner. It's important to have, you know, the critical pumping facilities online at all times, so that, you know, I think that the diesel generation is one of the only ways you can do that near term, but long term, figuring out how to do some of this in renewable ways, you know, solar and battery for the facilities that have the space, and maybe chasing the feds down for some dollars to help with that. Maybe probably not this year, but maybe sometime in the future. Yeah, to be able to just get as many of those critical sites online and renewable as possible.
We're already in progress. Our IT division's been working hard to identify to take a pump station and put the big high horsepower pumps on renewable energy. That takes a lot of efforts, and probably a diesel generator is probably the only near-term realistic, a large generator at the site. For the other components that use power at a typical site, like our telemetry and control systems, security systems, we can actually migrate that off the grid. You know, I understand totally where Hawaiian Electric has taken public safety as a paramount importance, especially after Lahaina. System reliability is somewhat secondary to that. But we're finding now that we have to begin to become more resilient to be able to operate with commercial power disruptions, which seem to occur quite often nowadays. But at least get our telemetry and control systems, our security systems on renewable power, solar and battery, I think is ideal. While we pursue building out our generator, backup power infrastructure, our facilities.
I mean, I think it also just plays into the larger effort, right? Where HECO is trying to come up with these, you know, these pathways to figure out how they're going to power Oahu specifically in coming years. And if the Board of Water Supply has a footprint as big as it is, getting that off of HECO's grid only helps the equation in the long run, right? It helps us in terms of what the bill is going to be that we got to pay every month, but it also just helps to get out of the way of this ever expanding grid capacity that's needed. So
yeah, it is. It is a challenge. We have 180 plus pumping stations that, whether it's a well station or a booster pump station that moves water up the hill around the island. And we don't have 180 almost, you know, plus generators, plus all the maintenance and support for that, and trying to balance reliability and affordability for ratepayers. So kind of taking a very strategic approach of expanding our generator inventory as necessary to try to benefit as many customers as we can, and especially our critical services like our hospitals, that they can get water during a disaster. We're gonna build that out. Megan mentioned I make them work hard to go after hazard mitigation grant funds. So typically when there's a presidentially declared disaster, a portion of the funds for that disaster would go toward mitigation, long-term mitigation. So that's been a really good benefit to us. We only need to come up with about 25% of the cost of a generator. 75% of the costs actually would be picked up by FEMA. But during our discussions with FEMA in the past, the regional administrator for Region 9, Bob Fenton, we met with him and he liked our approach to our backup power plans. And because of that, they've been very supportive in deploying in Hawaii a lot of generators and even large stored water storage tanks. I think it was over 50, might have been over 50 generators that they forward deployed. Although they reminded me those generators doesn't have Ernie's name on them. So with the recent super typhoons that happened in Micronesia, I think they moved some of those generators out to help support the communities in the island. So, but it's good that FEMA is very supportive.
Yeah. Didn't Bob just get appointed to be the head of the whole FEMA? He did, right, last week?
I was now the.
He's the head of the whole thing. He's like the fourth one in 12 months, but I mean, it's.
Oh,
There.
Well,
It's not a highly sought after job.
Yeah.
it's a challenging job, and I hope Bob stays there. He's got a good team. One of our Department of Emergency Management directors is now working for FEMA. Hiro Toya is now with FEMA, so I think it's a very positive thing.
You know, and also just useful for us because he has granular understanding of what Hawaii is all about. He spent a bunch of months here, you know, on the ground. He was on vacation, right, when Lahaina hit it.
Yeah.
He just stayed, so, but he was in Lahaina for several months, you know, himself, so.
I haven't seen Bob for a while, but when we met with him, it was a really good discussion. Yeah.
Well, I digress. Joy, just checking, the sheet says no testimony. Did you get anything last minute?
No, no, Chair.
Okay, and then we're gonna do the decision making in the regular meeting, right? Okay. Well, I just want to thank staff for such a well-prepared set of slides and thank you, folks.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the regular meeting, items requiring board action. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held April 27th, 2026. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve. Okay, it's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Kaneshiro,
I,
Board Member Lance Wahab,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Lapola,
Aye.
Board Member Jerry and Chan,
Aye.
Board Member Edwin Sniffen,
Abstain.
and Board Member Gina Hano,
Aye.
and Chair Nale who acting.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 6 ayes and 1 abstention.
Okay, awesome. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the minutes of the budget workshop held May 4th, 2026. Any discussion, additions, or edits? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So move.
Thank you. It's been moved. Second. And seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Kaneshiro,
I,
Board Member Lance Wahab,
Abstain.
Board Member Jeffrey Lapola,
Aye.
Board Member Jerry and Chan,
Aye.
Board Member Edwin Sniffen,
Abstain.
Board Member Gina Hano,
Aye.
and Chair Nale who acting.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes and 2 abstentions.
Thank you so much. Please note for the record. Moving on to item number 3, adoption of resolution number 1013-2026, adopting the operating and capital improvements program budget for fiscal year 2026 and 2027 and appropriating funds therefore. Chair recognizes Megan Muramatsu again. Hello.
Hello. Thanks, Chair Naalehu. So we recommend adoption of the proposed operating and capital improvement budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026, ending June 30th, 2027. A public hearing to consider the proposed budget as required by the city charter was held today. The affidavit attesting to the publication of the public hearing notice was provided. We further recommend adoption of the attached resolution 1013, 2026, appropriating funds for the operating and capital improvement program budget for fiscal year 26 to 27 as follows. $311,625, $754 from the operating fund for operating budget expenditures. The sums of $120,985,000 from the operating fund, $126,825,000 from the state revolving loan fund, $4,550,000 from the improvement fund, and $14,450,000 from the special expendable fund, for a total of $266,810,000 for the capital improvement program budget expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consideration.
Members, any other questions, comments, additions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you, Lance.
Second.
Thank you, Ed. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Panashiro,
I,
Board Member Lance Lohan,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Longboro,
Aye.
Board Member Terry Chen,
Aye.
Board Member Dickon Station,
Aye.
Board Member Gina Bono,
Aye.
and Chair Nolly Clancy.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 7 ayes.
Okay, congratulations. Try not to spend it all in one place. Again, I appreciate the hard work by yourselves and staff for getting this together. And Lance will be watching on the 24-month budgeting to make sure the hockey stick is not just longer.
Same steepness, but longer.
We're moving on to items for information. Number one, update on the Board of Water Supplies response to potential impacts of Red Hill field contamination. Chair recognizes Joyce Lay. Aloha.
Chair, board members, this is the May 2026 Red Hill update. I am Joyce Lay with the manager's office. So last week, I attended the Pearl Harbor Hickam Kalaeloa Restoration Advisory Board meeting, or RAB for short, and the Community Representation Initiative meeting, or CRI. Just for your information, the RAB is a venue where federal remedial restoration investigations bring in community involvement and also gather public inputs. The RAB is made up of military personnel and community members that lives around the affected area. So in this case, it was Pearl Harbor, Pearl City, IAEA area. And in recent years, the Pearl Harbor Hickam Kalaeloa RAB began conducting PFAS investigations at Red Hill. Just last year, Manager Lau and I, we were elected as ex officio non-voting members to the RAB. So we've been attending at these meetings, and as part of RAB members, we get to go on site visits to the different remedial investigation sites. So in January of this year, we visited the former IAEA laundry next to St. Elizabeth Church across from the IAEA Elementary School. The site was contaminated with dry cleaning solvents and were closed for remediation back in the around 90s. And during that site visit, we were made aware that the Navy had monitoring wells drilled as part of the remediation investigation. And one of them were still there. It's wasn't filled in like a lot of the other monitoring wells. So during the site visit, we asked if if the Navy would be able to include that monitoring well into their sampling plan and sampling network. Because just a quarter mile north of that well is their IAEA Halawa shaft, where the Navy just recently installed 12 granular active carbon contactors to treat PFAS. And during that site visit, we were told by the Navy personnel that they would include that well to test as part of their sampling if the regulators, EPA and DOH requires them to do so. And so as a result, we wrote a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency and DOH, Department of Health, requesting to have that monitoring well included into their sampling plan and monitoring well network. However, in March, we got a no response from the regulators. Their reasoning was that this monitoring well is way too far from Red Hill. But we have different thoughts because just like I mentioned earlier, just a quarter mile north Higher Halawa Shaft did detect PFAS, and they're putting in a large treatment system just to treat it for PFAS. So we thought it would be a good idea to include that monitoring well into the sampling network. And during the May 20th meeting, the regulators really just emphasized that, they had to follow procedures with the circular process. They couldn't digress from that. But so they as in EPA and DOH, they sort of deferred to one another as to who has that final authority to require the Navy to sample at that well. So yeah, sorry, that was very long, but we will continue to monitor their monitoring well network, data that they're sampling and collecting, and we'll try to encourage them to expand their monitoring network as well, so that we can get more information on where contaminants and water are flowing, so we can better understand the geology and hydrology in the area. So in terms of updates from the Navy Closure Task Force, their dashboard, I guess just a quick background summary. At the time of the closure, or at the time of the defueling and start of closing the facility, there were 14 tanks that were in operation and that needed to be drained and cleaned out before they can proceed in closing. As of right now, they have about 11 of the tanks have undergone at least the very first process of the closure, which is to ventilate the tanks first so that the personnel can get inside and clean the tanks. So this past month, we didn't really see any increase in residual fuel removal, but we did see tank number 11 transitioning into the ventilation phase. In terms of legislation updates, the legislation session is wrapping up, and some of the bills that we saw moving forward is House Bill 1800. This has to do with the state budget, where it actually includes $8 million to the Red Hill VI for planning, design, and construction for environmental studies and monitoring for Red Hill remediation. So this is the good news. So that more information can be learned about this whole situation. Also, 2 House concurrence resolutions urging the Department of Defense to extend their continue their support for affected members, as well as reassessing prior determinations and closure decisions under the circular process for military facilities that had PFAS investigations on. And in terms of upcoming events, in June, there is a walk for FI. This is hosted by Red Hill community members. As well as for the next board meeting, we had asked the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, NASEM, if they can come here and update the board and present to the board their findings on their latest clinical follow-up and care for those impacted by JP5. This was briefly brought up last meeting, so we thought it would be a good opportunity for the NASEM staffs to actually be the ones to brief the board about their findings. And this concludes my update. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Comments?
Well, I just want to thank Joyce for attending the meetings. I haven't been able to get to the meetings myself. They're after hours, and she's able to ask some good questions of the military. Thank you, Joyce.
Just one question. Did you guys have questions? I just have one question. I know we got a little bit of conversation in about the EPA rolling back some of the PFAS family designations. It says, you all know that many of the PFAS, PFOA, it's 4 parts per trillion that we've been tracking, and you got to install filtration at the sites that are providing drinking water. But last week they rolled some of that back. Any comment on that, Ernie and Erwin? And does that really affect us in some of the planning? I know that like budgeting is working on filtration and other amenities.
It doesn't really affect us. It's a proposal right now. They propose to like rescind a portion of the rules that were, they adopted, regulations they adopted, I think, Karen, was it 2024? That were regulated about 6 different PFAS chemicals. They're only proposing to keep 2 of them and eliminate the other 4. So the 2 that they're going to keep, PFOA and PFOS, the MCL, the maximum contaminant level is at 4 parts per trillion. They're proposing to keep that and not touch that. And that's PFOS in particular is one of the things we're finding at Comedy Wells, very close to the 4 parts per trillion range. So we feel we should just continue to move forward with installing the treatment systems at 3 proposed locations.
And they're giving more time to get those online.
They actually not really granting more time. They do allow the states that have primacy to entertain a request from a water utility that is regulated by these regulations to request more time. And I think we're leaning open to giving a 2-year extension to that, but it's not in the proposed rescission of the rules. But it is an option they've outlined. They will be conducting a public hearing that we plan to attend on July 7th remotely across the country to talk about their rescission. So I think this has garnered mixed reactions from the communities and other environmental groups. And I think the EPA is only taking comments on the procedural matters. They're not taking comments on the substance of what they're doing, just on the procedural matters. Erwin, you want to add anything?
No, what Ernie's really correct. The rescinding of the 4 contaminants is based on a procedural error they claimed that they did back in 2024. So those limits are no longer, are not valid because it was done under a procedural error.
So they're admitting in the proposed rule that they published on May 20th in the Federal Register that they did it in error. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but for us, we're continuing to move forward.
Sure.
And at some point, I think on the emerging contaminant, this is all in the category of emerging contaminants, that we should probably do a briefing of our emerging contaminants project for the board. And what are some of the initial findings? Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll schedule that for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Jess. Moving on to item of information number 2, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes Barry Usagawa. Aloha, Barry. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good job at the energy conference, by the way.
Thank you.
It actually gave me, reminded me of the perspective of water conservation and energy is very parallel, very similar. You'll find that when our production goes down, we're using less energy. So in a way, it kind of helps with the bottom line there. But for the month of April, we had 1 index station in low groundwater caution, Kamaki's in caution, and our production level is still 123 million gallons per day, which is quite low for April. The rainfall index was 91%. 5-month moving average was 180%. So reflecting the kind of lows that we had in March. As of May, there's no drought conditions on the Hawaii drought monitor for Oahu. And the National Weather Service is still forecasting above normal precipitation through the end of this month through May. The monitoring wells are exhibiting increased head levels for April. It's sort of the good hockey stick.
You're okay with, I'm okay with your hockey stick.
Yeah.
I'm okay with your hockey stick.
Just wanted to mention that, especially in the Honolulu area, because they really went up, and it reflects all the rainfall, and then so the production for April is lower than April of 2025, which every month was over the 5-month the 5-year average. So, and in April this year was lower than the 5-year show. I don't know if you have the rainfall index is there. You can see 91% of normal. Big rainfall in February and March, and then the pumpage or the production, it's like an inverse relationship for the green line. Quite
I think it was last year.
lower than the 5-year monthly average. So we're in good shape. And that's my report.
Yeah, thank you. Questions, members? It looks like we got a bunch of recharge, yeah?
We did.
That's awesome.
A lot of it was rain runoff, but then it was constant, and then it did get in. And I was surprised how quickly it responded within 3 months. Typically, it takes longer than that, but we had so much that it did respond. So good thing.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members?
Every time it rains, I think of Barry. And I think how happy he is. He's the only guy who's happy. It's right anyway.
Even if it's golfing.
So Barry and I were at this energy conference last week, and they had like upstairs all these vendors. I was talking to one of the vendors, and they're in Alaska, and they do generators and fuel storage. And she was like, "Oh, like when there's when the roads are closed and got fire like that, like in Alaska, we just fly the generators in with a helicopter." So I'm just putting it out there, like if there was like a green helicopter, probably not in the budget, but it's one way to do it.
Big helicopter.
Yeah. Moving on to item for information number 3, water main repair report for April 2026. I noticed Daniel doesn't have any
Hockey sticks.
toys today, but that's okay. We're
Try to get
happy
some
to see you nonetheless.
afternoon, board chair members. I'm Daniel Lee, acting assistant program administrator for field operations. I have the water main and leak detection reports for the month of April. We had 32 main breaks, 6 were leaks, 25 were breaks, and there was 1 damage. For our leak detection report, we had 46 points of interest. We found 38 leaks, 4 main leaks, 25 were meter coupling leaks, 6 leaks on the customer side, and 3 service leaks. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, John.
Do you see the leak detection getting better with technology, or is it the same, or the hit rate? I'm just curious.
It's getting better with each year. So every year we get a new scan. And it does the technology does get better. And I think the things that we buy to help look for the leaks, the technology gets better on that. So it's much more effective than it was when we first started out.
Yeah, just interesting to see if technology is getting better, and eventually if the hit rate will be much higher as the detection technology gets better. Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, thank you for the time today. Thanks for
Thanks.
coming in. Okay, anything else for discussion? Anything else? Okay, so what I want to do is, I want to, I think we can do this. I want to get the approval of the minutes of the executive session held February 2023 done. Joy, if you could you just remind us who was in that meeting? So who can vote and who needs to abstain? And if you guys have questions about the minutes, then we can go into executive and discuss them. But if you don't have questions, then we can just approve them here in the regular meeting. I think.
You, Jonathan, Lance, Jeff, and Jean.
Okay, it was me, Jonathan, Lance, Jeff, and Jean.
Correct.
Okay, so if there are no questions, additions, or anything else that would force us to go into executive before approving, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of executive session held February 23, 2026.
Oh,
Thank you, Gene. It's been moved
Second.
and seconded by Lance. A roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Conchero,
Aye.
Board Member Lance Williams,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Lopolo,
Aye.
Member Jerry and Chen,
Abstain.
Board Member Edwin Again,
Abstain.
Board Member Gino Vano,
Aye.
and Chair Nolly Wentley.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes and 2 abstentions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Please note for the record, and I will also entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I make that motion.
Thank you, Lance. Second by Jeff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We'll take a quick 7-minute break and ready the room for executive session. Okay, we are now in regular session. Any other business pertaining to this meeting? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of May 26th.
So moved.
Thank you, Ed. It's been moved.
I shall second.
It's been seconded by Gene. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks, for your time today.